Moving on, we have a scene that I really have not been looking forward to breaking down because it is a tangled mess of nonsense, but the fish needs to be fried. So here we go. Mirabel enters Isabella's room and does not say, "Hey sis, I know this sounds crazy, but I just talked with Tio Bruno and he had a vision that the only way to save the miracle is for you and I to hug. It's weird, right? Yeah, I know, I don't like it either, but Bruno says we gotta. So you don't believe me? Well, I can take you to his hidey hole and he can tell you himself. Anyway, let's just get this over with. I want to save the magic and everything." Yeah, so instead of that, Mirabel opts for a more indirect approach. She tries to lay on the sweet talk, giving an obviously insincere speech about how she wants to be a better sister. Isabella predictably doesn't buy it, accusing Mirabel of ruining Luis's gift and her own engagement. She says,
Everything was perfect. Abuela was happy. The family was happy. You want to be a better sister? Apologize for ruining my life.
"Ruining your life, eh? That seems a bit unfair, but being unfair would not actually be out of character for Isabella, I suppose. And it does actually make some sense from Isabella's perspective to blame Mirabel for ruining her proposal dinner. That wasn't actually Mirabel's fault, of course, but it may look that way to her sister. Judging by Isabella's anger, it seems like she was really genuinely invested in marrying Mariano. I mean, she's really mad here that it didn't go through. She's definitely not acting relieved or like she just dodged a bullet getting out of a marriage that she never wanted. And, it would really be a shame if she were to completely reverse on that within the next 60 seconds, wouldn't it? Anyway, we then get this line.
Go on. Apologize.
Okay, so Isabella has moved past the somewhat justified indignation about her ruined engagement and is now just relishing in the pleasure of humiliating her little sister and making her grovel. Mirabel slobbers out the fakest apology in the history of the world, and just look at her face. This woman is a sadist. You know what, guys? I think Mariano dodged a bullet. Yeah, so Mirabel can't go through with it, and she says, "I'm sorry your life is so great. I wasn't trying to ruin your life. Some of us have bigger problems, you selfish, entitled princess." And yeah, that's putting it mildly, Mira. Then we get this.
I've been stuck being perfect my whole entire life.
Nope, 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 nope. No, stop it. Stop it right there, movie. You shall not pass with this nonsense. We have had one character after another tell us throughout this movie that Isabella is perfect, and it does not make any sense. Why do people believe this? Why do they keep saying it? Absolutely nothing about this person is perfect. She can make plants and flowers. That is the extent of her power. Everyone in the family Madrigal keeps talking as if Isabella also has some kind of superhuman feminine grace, but there is absolutely no evidence of this. Additionally, no one has placed any undue burdens or expectations on her. She hasn't been stuck doing anything. Nothing is demanded of her that is not also expected of everyone else. We have never seen her be chastised, criticized, or even corrected in any way by anyone throughout the entirety of this film. Her grandmother once picked an odd colored flower out of her hair. That's it. Everyone has told her repeatedly that she is perfect. This isn't true at all, but even if it was, they are giving her praise because of something they believe she already is. They are not placing on her an unfair expectation of what she ought to be. Peppa has an infinitely stronger claim to unreasonable expectations than Isabella does. Isabella can do pretty much whatever she wants. Nobody else in the family gets to actively torment their siblings without any repercussions whatsoever. Isabella, my dear, you are not put upon. You are not stuck being perfect.
You are a mean girl.
So she tells Mirabel that literally the only thing you have ever done is mess it up. Okay, first of all, if being perfect, whatever that is supposed to mean, is so disagreeable to her, then why is she so angry at her sister for messing it up, whatever that's supposed to mean? From what we have seen, the only thing Mirabel has ever done to mess up anything Isabella cared about was to crash her engagement dinner, but even that doesn't work because Mirabel didn't crash the dinner. Dolores, Camilo, Felix, Peppa, and Antonio crashed the dinner. Mirabel was the only person actively trying to prevent the chaos from breaking out. Isabella doesn't see it this way, which is fine, but she is 100% spewing bovine-sourced fertilizer when she says that Mirabel has been constantly messing up her perfect life. Mirabel says, quite rightly, that
Nothing is messed up! You can still marry that big dumb hunk!
Well, that seemed uncalled for.
We don't really know anything about Mariano at this point, except that he can do something musical, either play the piano or maybe just sing. It's not really clear, but the point is, I don't know where this big dumb hunk thing is coming from. Why does Mirabel feel this way about Mariano? Is she jealous? I mean, I don't know. Maybe Mariano's dumb, or maybe. Maybe the movie just wants the audience to think that he's a big dumb hunk so that we feel sympathy for Isabella when she says this.
I never wanted to marry him! I was doing it for the family!
This is an interesting statement, to say the least. So let's explore it. I can absolutely believe that Isabella does not love or even like Mariano. In fact, I'm not sure that she is capable of loving anyone other than herself. I can believe that she will never respect Mariano, and I 100% believe that their marriage would be a terrible one because Isabella has the maturity of a spoiled toddler. Leaving that aside, if she says that she doesn't want to be his wife, then I guess we just have to believe her. Now let's examine the second part, where she claims that she was willing to marry him anyway for the family. Now, what exactly does this mean to her? Based on this,
Such a fine young man with our perfect Isabella will bring a new generation of magical blessings and make both of our families stronger.
and this,
Such a perfect match.
So perfect.
And so good for the Encanto.
my best guess is that Isabella believes it is her duty to produce children in order to perpetuate both the family and the miracle. But it is a duty that she dreads, or at least that she is afraid of. Now, stepping back for just a second, I don't think this is a hot take, but maybe it is. There is no shame in having reasons to get married beyond romantic attraction, and there is nothing wrong with the idea that marriage and family are responsibilities whose purpose goes beyond your own personal satisfaction. If Isabella actually shares her grandmother's desire to strengthen the family by bringing in a new generation of madrigals and is willing to go through with this despite her own personal misgivings, that would actually imply a certain degree of selflessness and maturity of which, up to this point, I would not have believed this character was capable. She has been shown to be cruel, self-obsessed, and arrogant. Now, it isn't impossible that such a person might also possess a strong sense of duty and responsibility, but in her case, I simply don't believe it. What seems far more likely is that she is just afraid of disappointing her grandmother. I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but Isabella never actually goes through with the engagement, and once she has the courage, or I guess the anger, to say no, she does. So whatever duty or obligation she felt regarding the marriage must have been astonishingly weak for her to give it up so easily. That means that this,
Tonight, he wants 5 babies.
Wonderful.
and this,
Such a perfect match.
So perfect.
And so good for the Encanto.
and this,
I want not a sound out of you.
and this are not examples of Isabella putting on a brave face to do something out of necessity or duty that she doesn't want to do. Instead, these are evidence that Isabella is willing to lie to everyone, including her prospective husband, out of nothing more than fear of disapproval. I can believe that Isabella might have justified her actions to herself by telling herself that she was doing it for the family, but that just isn't the case. Isabella was not making a brave sacrifice on behalf of the family. She's just a coward. To be fair to her, maybe this fear can be justified. Maybe she has reasons to believe that something terrible will happen if she makes it known that she isn't interested in marriage, either for herself or for the sake of the family. Well, were she to make this known, there might be some hurt feelings, sure, and some embarrassment at having to admit that she had led everyone on for so long, especially Mariano. Abuela seemed pretty invested in the engagement, so she might be especially disappointed. Isabella might get chewed out. Abuela might treat her coldly. Maybe. We've actually seen no indication that either Julieta or Pepa were coerced into their respective marriages, nor that they are unhappy with them. I suppose it's possible that Abuela knows Isabella's true feelings and has been pressuring her to go through with the engagement anyway, but that is the opposite of what we have been shown. Isabella has never once voiced any reluctance or opposition to Mariano's proposal. Now, we as the audience might suspect from some of her facial expressions that she's pretending, but what really matters is that none of the other characters do. Isabella has successfully deceived them all. Therefore, Abuela cannot be blamed for pushing for a marriage that by all appearances her granddaughter desperately wants. As far as we know, if Isabella were to tell the truth, Abuela may very well respond with, "Why in the world didn't you tell me sooner?" We have no reason to believe that she would get angry or try to guilt Isabella into going through with the marriage anyway. I mean, yes, Abuela has her own reasons to want to see the marriage succeed, but that is not the same thing as being willing to push Isabella into a marriage against her will. Now, if the writers really wanted to make this whole thing Abuela's fault, they could have given us a scene in which Isabella confesses to her grandmother that she doesn't want to marry Mariano, but is then manipulated or guilted by her grandmother into going along with it. Or, if they wanted to show Isabella struggling with the conflict between her sense of duty and her personal feelings, then we could see her express her sincere desire to get married because she takes her family responsibilities seriously, but that maybe she's not looking forward to it, or maybe she just doesn't like Mariano in particular. Unfortunately, none of these are in the film. Perhaps because the writers wanted to have their big reveal where Mirabel discovers that her perfect sister is actually human after all, and then Isabella can have her girl power moment where she rises above the expectations of others to be her own self. But none of this works. As depicted, this entire situation is completely Isabella's fault. She lied to everyone and was willing to enter into a marriage that she was absolutely not committed to in order to save herself the trouble of saying no. Now, maybe you empathize with her, maybe you don't. That, of course, is subjective, but objectively, her behavior is entirely selfish. Mariano, my man, we barely know you, but I am sure that you deserve better. Now, none of this means that Isabella is necessarily a bad character. She is a deeply flawed person, but that is not the same as having deeply flawed writing. There are foolish, vain, cowardly, and dishonest people in real life, and there is no reason why a fictional character cannot also be those things. In fact, some of the best written characters are absolutely terrible people. What would be an issue, however, is if the movie were to try to frame Isabella's foolish, vain, cowardly, and dishonest behavior as noble, wise, brave, and empowering behavior. We will have to examine that when the time comes. All of this does beg the question, though, of why exactly Isabella is so angry with Mirabel for ruining her proposal dinner. If she really didn't want to marry Mariano, and she definitely isn't motivated by a sincere desire to marry and raise children for the sake of the family, then why isn't she secretly relieved? I mean, she got the best of both worlds. She avoided, or at least postponed, a marriage that she says she never wanted, and nobody is blaming her for it. So why is Isabella mad about this? Is she faking her anger too? Or are the writers forcing Isabella to act angry about the ruined engagement so that it seems extra shocking to Mirabel and the audience when she reveals that she never wanted it anyway? Well, yeah, it's shocking, but that's because it doesn't make any sense. Because, who expects characters to say and do things that directly contradict things that they said and did only moments ago? You know what? At this point in the movie, maybe we should expect that. Anyway, moving on, Mirabel is shocked by her sister's confession, because it doesn't make any sense, and seizes the chance to offer her a hug, which you'll remember is the whole reason why she's in here. But Isabella is distracted by a surprise barrel cactus that sprung into existence at the moment she finally told the truth. And cue song. While Mirabel continues to try to get a hug from her sister, Isabella musically fawns over her prickly little creation. She is thrilled about making something new and unexpected. It isn't symmetrical or perfect, and I'm getting tired of that word, but it's beautiful and it's hers, and she wonders aloud what else she can do. So, are we supposed to believe that in well over a decade of having the power to produce plants at will, Isabella has never even tried to make a cactus? I mean, a cactus isn't like some bizarre new thing. They're all over the place, including Colombia. So she's just never bothered to try and make one? I mean, sure, I can easily see why littering your room, the house, and the whole village with spiny death balls wouldn't be a good idea, but she's acting here like the very idea of making a cactus was some crazy fever dream until this moment. Like, is she just shocked that it happened by accident? Guys, is this abominable person so unaccustomed to being honest that the experience caused her to lose control of her powers? I. Should I just give up hoping that any of this is ever gonna make any sense? Here's the problem. Within the universe of the film itself, it is extremely strange that Isabella would be unaware that she was capable of making a cactus. We have had no reason until now to believe that there were any limitations to her plant making powers whatsoever. If it's a plant, she can make it. Sure, she mostly makes purple and pink flowers, but there was never any indication that this was more than personal preference. I think what we are supposed to infer here is that Isabella has been so oppressed and controlled by expectations, rules, and artificial limitations that she's been too afraid to explore the actual limits of her power. Limits that she has now breached entirely on accident and that have captivated her imagination. But who exactly would have been boxing her in like this? Everybody except Mirabel seems to think that Isabella can do no wrong even when she acts like a
Mean girl!
Abuela once pulled a flower out of her hair, but how much are we supposed to read into that? We haven't seen Isabella experimenting with other plants and being told to knock it off. We haven't seen anyone remind her, remember Isabella, flowers only. I'm sure that we as the audience are supposed to assume that it's Abuela's expectations that have caused this heretofore unseen repression, but in what way? What expectations? The expectation to get married? We have been over why Abuela can't be blamed for that, and what does that have to do with Isabella's plant powers anyway? I mean, Luisa is the one who spends all day literally carrying other people's burdens. What responsibilities and expectations does Isabella even have? Is it unreasonable to expect her not to place cactuses everywhere? Like, I'm sorry, living with other people means that you don't get to do whatever you want, and this is especially true when you have magical powers that could easily turn your family into pincushions. I'm I'm so confused. What oppressive barriers is this girl supposed to be breaking through here?
What is happening?
Yeah, no kidding. To be clear, it isn't impossible that Isabella has endured some kind of traumatic manipulation off screen. The problem is that if it happened at all, it happened off screen. The audience is meant to go, oh, it's not her fault that she's
Mean girl!
it's her family's fault, or society's fault, or something. And we're supposed to believe this simply because she said so. Now, to be perfectly honest here, I already know why all of this is happening. You already know why all of this is happening. The writers are using Isabella to insert a theme that they want to have, and they are evidently willing to do so whether or not it makes any sense within the story they are telling. Isabella is supposed to represent young women all over the world who are oppressed by the weight of society's expectations, worn down with perfectionism, and starved for even the slightest opportunity to be their true selves. And this cactus is the first breach in that oppressive cage, the first ray of light, life, and self expression to shine down into the dark pit of an empty, pointless, externally controlled life. This theme may resonate with you, or it might not. But when themes and symbols and metaphors are used to justify character inconsistencies and weak plots, it means that the state of your writing is indefensible. You cannot defend poor writing by saying, it doesn't matter, it's going to start an important conversation. Or, but what about my themes? Or, it doesn't have to make sense, it's got deep themes. Or, you just don't get this movie, you're not acknowledging the deeper themes. Let me say this as plainly as I can. themes are not good writing. Good writing can have deep themes, or it might not, but when you have to invoke a subjective interpretation of a scene in order to justify its existence, it means that it is poorly constructed. The metaphor may be very meaningful to you personally, but that has nothing to do with its objective quality. The problem here is not that this movie has a theme of a girl breaking free from expectations and limitations. The problem is that in this movie, this theme is handled incompetently. I generally don't like to issue advice, so I will say this as a plea. Please, to all of the writers and aspiring writers out there, I beg you, do not shoehorn a theme into your story if it will damage your plot and break your characters. If you care at all about the themes you want to address, it would not be wise to place them on top of nonsense. Okay, rant over. Moving on, Isabella sings about how she makes tons of roses and perfect practiced poses, and that so much hides behind her smile. So, the roses I get, but who is she making poses for? Like, who is asking for this? Okay, like, she had to pose for that family photo, but everyone else did too. Well, except Mirabel. I can see the tenuous through line here that the film is trying to make, as though she has been constantly surrounded by people telling her, hey, you're the flower girl, so you have to be perfectly graceful and pretty at all times. But this never actually happens. Nobody says anything to her that is even remotely close to this. And as for what hides behind her smile, well, I mean, we've already seen what kind of person she is. She then wonders aloud what she could do if she just grew what she was feeling in the moment, which, as far as any of us knew, is what she's been doing the whole time. Every time we see her make plants appear, she's just doing whatever she wants. There's no one there evaluating her performance or telling her what she needs to make. She asks what she could do if she knew it didn't need to be perfect, it just needed to be, and they'd let her be. Let her be? Who are they? Who is she talking about? And who isn't letting her be? And I swear, if I hear the word perfect used in connection with this character one more time, I'm gonna lose it. She names off a bunch of plants, which I'm pretty sure are considered weeds in Colombia, and says she'll just push through whatever that means. So she makes some wild and wacky flora saying that she wants something new and she's sick of pretty things. I mean, I can understand getting bored with the same old stuff and wanting to branch out and try new things. That's all well and good, but are we really supposed to believe that she's been humiliating her sister and lying about her marriage goals simply out of boredom? Is that really the excuse that she's trying to make here? Well, either Mirabel buys it or she's just really determined to get that hug because she cheers Isabella right on, saying that it seems her sister's whole life has been a dream. My best guess is that she's saying that Isabella has never really been happy, never really been herself, as it were. This is fine, since self obsessed jerks are usually unhappy. Mirabel says it's awesome to see her sister rise, and I'm still wondering what in the world they're talking about. Isabella isn't gaining some new power here. There has literally been nothing and no one stopping her from making whatever she wants this entire time. So the girls repeat a chorus about being in the moment, and isn't it great when you know it's okay to be imperfect? And the lack of self awareness is staggering because throughout this entire verse, Isabella is causing an absolute jungle to spring up in their own house and throughout the entire village. And, like, not in a good way. Like, look at this. She could have easily killed somebody. This poor donkey now has severe internal bleeding. This guy very nearly choked to death. And this vine just punched Mariano in his already broken nose. Not to mention how much she just tore up everyone's houses and all the roads. And all so that she could go on this self indulgent, ego stroking binge. Like, the movie wants us to be proud of her moment of self discovery, but she doesn't give a rat's rear end about how her actions are affecting other people. This isn't character growth. The film just wants us to applaud her terrible behavior. Mirabel even has the nerve to sing, hey everybody, clear the way. Yeah, so I guess Isabella's just gonna terrorize the neighborhood with her godlike plant powers, y'all, and she's not gonna take any responsibility for the consequences of her actions, and everyone just needs to deal with that. Just look at Abuela's face here. She's absolutely baffled that her granddaughters could be so idiotic, and for once, I am completely on your side with this one, madam. Mirabel credits Isabella with changing her mind, and I have no words. Has Mirabel forgotten about this?
The little sisterly advice. If you weren't always trying too hard, you wouldn't be in the way.
And this?
I want not a sound out of you.
And this?
Go on. Apologize.
And this?
Literally, the only thing you have ever done for me is mess things up!
So in what deranged alternate universe would Mirabel's opinion of her sister be completely reversed simply because she sneezed out a cactus and declared her intention to be even more self-centered than before? This song is proclaiming that we have reached the resolution of Isabella's character arc, but she doesn't have one. It's an utter illusion. Isabella hasn't overcome or even faced any adversity whatsoever that we have seen, and she certainly hasn't learned anything. We are being told that Isabella is now a better and more genuine person for having relinquished oppressive restrictions that she never had, and that her relationship with her sister is now completely mended, but this is ridiculous. The relationship between these two had the potential to explore forgiveness, healing, and redemption in a really powerful way, but that potential has been completely squandered in favor of a cheap girl power moment that the script has not earned whatsoever. Isabella has been cruel and spiteful toward her little sister, presumably for years. She knows that Mirabel is struggling with the insecurity of having no gift, and she has gone out of her way to rub salt on that wound. It could have actually been great to see such a bitter and toxic relationship be healed, but have you noticed what is conspicuously absent from this supposed resolution? Isabella never apologized for anything.
Go on. Apologize.
Yeah, that would be really nice, wouldn't it? Instead, I guess we're all supposed to just believe that it was never Isabella's fault in the first place. It was this mysterious phantom they that keeps whispering in her ear that she's only allowed to make roses. That's where the blame should go, and Isabella bears no responsibility for her treatment of anyone whatsoever. Anyway, I'm not going to spend any more time on this ridiculous scene. Isabella gives her sister a hug, I guess as thanks for saving her from the unrealistic expectation to not destroy the town or something. And we see the candle burning brighter than ever, and the cracks in the house begin to heal. I guess this means Bruno is back at work with his spackle in the walls in a dozen different places at once. I don't know anymore. Alright, so to recap, what happens in this scene is that Isabella is angry with Mirabel for ruining her engagement to Mariano before then admitting that she never actually wanted to be engaged to Mariano. Isabella accidentally makes a cactus and is captivated by imagining what other things she might be able to make. Mirabel encourages Isabella, who then ravages the town with her godlike plant powers and the girl's embrace, which you'll recall is the thing that Bruno's vision told her she needed to do. Speaking of characters, we learn that Mirabel forgives easily even when the other person expresses no remorse and blames their actions on others. And boy, do we learn a lot about Isabella. She is willing to tell egregious lies repeatedly in order to avoid disapproval or embarrassment. She convinces herself that her selfish behavior is actually somehow for the family. She does not want to marry Mariano and feels no compelling duty or responsibility regarding marriage in general. She blames Mirabel for messing up things that Isabella didn't want anyway. She claims to be the victim of phantom expectations to be perfect. She still enjoys humiliating her little sister. She believes that she has become a better person by being even less considerate of others than she was before. And lastly, she believes that relationships can be healed in an instant without so much as apologizing for years of abusive and cruel behavior. As far as in-universe consistencies go, I would like to know, is Isabella actually subject to unrealistic expectations or restrictions that have been levied against her off-screen? Or is she simply allergic to any kind of self-awareness and accountability for her actions? Additionally, why does the film try so hard to frame Isabella as both a good person and a victim while showing us that she is neither? And finally, is Mirabel actually willing to forgive her sister, or is she simply playing along in order to get the hug that she needs to save the miracle? There are some miscellaneous issues, like why was Isabella surprised by her ability to make a cactus? We still have no idea what in the world people mean when they repeatedly refer to Isabella as perfect. And lastly, I would just like to know if Mariano has any idea how lucky he is to not be engaged to Isabella. Moving on, Abuela barges in and demands to know what's going on. Mirabel says that everything is fine and that they're going to save the miracle. Abuela says, "What are you talking about? Look at our home, look at your sister." Mirabel's response is that Isabella wasn't happy and that she needed her proposal to be ruined so she could be happy, I guess, since, Isabella isn't capable of speaking for herself. Mirabel gets all excited, saying that she's making everything better, and Abuela finally loses it.
You have to stop, Mirabel!
She says,
The crack started with you.
which is true. She then says that,
Bruno left because of you.
as we've discussed, Bruno's decision to disappear makes no sense whatsoever. Abuela has not seen or spoken with Bruno since she asked him to have a vision about the magic. All she knows at this point is that Bruno vanished the same day that Mirabel failed to receive a gift, and that a vision has been found that has a picture of Mirabel in it. I suppose that's enough for her to infer that Bruno left because of Mirabel somehow, but there is no way that she could know this for certain. Wait a second, you guys know what I just thought of? Why does everybody keep saying that Bruno left? Like, everybody is convinced that he's still alive or that he left voluntarily, but they have no reason to know these things. Except for Mirabel, as far as everyone else knows, Bruno could have died or gotten trapped or lost or kidnapped somewhere. They have absolutely no idea what happened to him, but they all assume that he just walked off of his own volition. I mean, sure, that's what actually happened, but how does anyone know this? Like, why isn't Mirabel right now explaining to them all, like, hey, Abuela, guess what? I found your missing son. He's still alive. Yeah, who knew, right? So come on, let's go see him. I bet he can help us figure out a way to save the Oh, right. I forgot. Mirabel is the one who has to have the answers to everything. So obviously, Mirabel has to set things right all on her own without any help or input from anybody else, and everything has to be about her all the time. My bad. Abuela then says,
Luisa's losing her powers because of you.
now, we don't actually know if this is true or not, since, as we've gone over, it isn't and likely never will be clear how this magic works or why its failure affects the various members of the family the way it does. Mirabel herself was open to the possibility just a few minutes ago that everything might actually be her fault, and from Abuela's perspective, this would be a perfectly reasonable conclusion, since Luisa's weakness seems to have come immediately after her interactions with Mirabel. Abuela then says,
Isabella's out of control because of you.
so yeah, Isabella's got other problems, but in this one instance, yeah, Isabella trashed the house and the village with her plants because Mirabel egged her on. So, yeah, everything Abuela's saying here is pretty solid so far. She then says this.
I don't know why you weren't given a gift, but it is not an excuse for you to hurt this family.
Mirabel looks crushed, ominous music plays, the candlelight dims, and cracks begin to form once more. The implication here is that Abuela has crossed some kind of line. She has gone too far and said too much, and Abuela's words are harming the magic. But has she gone too far? Has she said too much? She doesn't know why Mirabel wasn't given a gift. Nobody does, so that part of her statement was perfectly true. And the fact that she doesn't have a gift isn't an excuse for Mirabel to hurt the family, so I don't think anyone would dispute this. But this statement by Abuela is framed as though she has said something unthinkable by openly suggesting that Mirabel might somehow be to blame for the fading Encanto, but as far as anyone knows, she very well might be to blame. Mirabel has been directly involved with every symptom of the magic's impending failure. At most, we could say that Abuela is jumping to conclusions, but frankly, so is Mirabel. The only thing Mirabel knows for sure is that her decisions will decide the fate of the miracle, but she has no way of knowing which way her actions are going to swing the pendulum. As I said mere minutes ago, she was openly considering the possibility that she might actually be the cause of the problem, or at least that she's making things worse. But now, for some reason, she's convinced that she's actually going to be the savior of everything for no other reason than that she accidentally put Isabella in a good mood and made her go all Fern Gully all over the place with complete disregard for everyone's safety. Abuela's certainty here that Mirabel is hurting the family is premature, perhaps, but at least she has reasons to suspect this. Mirabel's conviction that she is, in fact, fixing everything is based on what? That she has good intentions? That Isabella feels better? That the cracks disappeared? But that doesn't work. Mirabel knows that Bruno is the one fixing the cracks from inside the walls, so this shouldn't be evidence to her that she's actually making the magic stronger. Yes, the candle did burn brighter for a little bit, right? But this is the only real evidence that her recent actions have had a positive effect, so why isn't she calling attention to that fact? Instead of babbling on like a crazy person, she could have just said, Abuela, I know it looks bad. I'm sorry about the house. I'm sorry for all the confusion I've caused. But look, the candle is burning brighter than ever, so something I'm doing must be helping. Let's figure out what's making the candle bright so we can do more of that. I mean, I get that she's a teenager, and teenagers don't always think straight, and she did mention the candle, but then she went on to ramble on about a bunch of other stuff that only served to frustrate her grandmother, and I can only assume that the writers made her do this so that the rising tension and chaos of the scene could explode in a single dramatic confrontational line instead of, because it made sense. Mirabel then says,
I will never be good enough for you. Will I?
This, in a word, is nonsense. Once again, I'm pretty sure that Mirabel is supposed to be a teenager, so I can understand that she would interpret the situation this way, but it is still nonsense. From what we have seen, Abuela actually has very low expectations for Mirabel. She doesn't demand much from her at all. In fact, the only thing we have ever seen her ask Mirabel to do is to back off, do less, and stop trying to help so much. From what we are shown, the only thing Mirabel needs to do in order to be, quote, good enough, unquote, for her grandmother is to leave some things alone and let other people handle them. Really, she's just asking Mirabel to please stop actively making things worse. Now, that might be an unfair accusation on Abuela's part, as we've said, but again, as far as any of the characters know, it might actually be perfectly fair. There is no way that we as the audience or any of the characters can know for sure because nobody understands how the magic works. I don't doubt that this assertion is hurtful to Mirabel either way, but the simple fact is that Abuela isn't actually asking her for much. Nonetheless, Mirabel doubles down, telling her grandmother that none of them will ever be good enough for her. Once again, she's young, so I can understand her really trying to make this accusation stick, but it just doesn't work. The only person who maybe has been treated unfairly is Peppa, simply because of the nature of her curse. I'm just calling it a curse now, which requires that Pippa regulate her emotions to a degree that nobody else has to. Which, number one, isn't Abuela's fault, but number two, from what we've seen, no one else really has a whole lot expected of them. Luisa has a lot of chores, sure, but we don't know what would happen if she told her grandmother that she needs a rest because we've never seen her try. Mirabel then says,
Bruno left our family because you only saw the worst.
No! Bruno's decision to become a wall hobo makes absolutely no sense, sure, but at best, it was a boneheaded attempt to protect his niece from being blamed for the failing magic because her picture was in the vision that Abuela asked him to have. Not only did Bruno's decision have nothing to do with his mother's opinion of him, but nobody has bothered to explain why Mirabel shouldn't be blamed for the dying miracle. There is still no proof whatsoever that she isn't somehow unknowingly harming the magic, and there is plenty of circumstantial evidence that she is. I mean, in this very scene, we can see the house cracking to pieces every time Mirabel yells at her grandmother. So what exactly is the old woman supposed to think? Abuela isn't seeing the worst in anyone. She hasn't seen the worst in anyone. At best, she's jumping to conclusions, but again, it's not like she has no reason to. Who exactly is she seeing the worst in? We've actually never heard her say an unkind thing about any...
Bruno didn't care about this family.
He loves this family.
Okay. So, characters can certainly believe and say things that are incorrect. They can have flawed opinions, beliefs, values, and perspectives. In fact, this can actually open up some great potential for character growth, but they have to have reasons for what they think and what they say, even if those reasons end up being flawed or baseless. They can have very selective experiences that give them a skewed perspective of the world or of other people. Characters can be indoctrinated into believing strongly in a false cause. They can be overwhelmed with circumstances that they're not prepared for and don't know how to make sense of. Characters may have personalities that cause them to value certain things more than others. They can be young, naive, or otherwise inexperienced. They can be cognitively deficient, or characters, yes, can just simply be evil. All of that is fine, but I ask you, why is Abuela saying that her son didn't care about the family? This has all been framed so that we as the audience believe that she is saying something untrue, but why does she believe it? Does she have any reason whatsoever to be saying this? Well, we know that Bruno had a habit of telling people about inevitable future events that they didn't like to know about. Abuela asked him to use this gift to find out if something was harming the magic and what, if anything, could be done about it. She never saw him after that. Did he leave voluntarily? She can't know the answer to that. Is he even alive? She can't know that either. Until a few minutes ago, she didn't even know whether he had actually had the vision that she requested, let alone what it contained. We've already been over why it makes no sense for everyone in the family to somehow know that Bruno had a terrible vision about the magic and that he subsequently left voluntarily, while also not knowing that all he did to disappear was crawl through a hole in the wall. But leaving that aside, why would Abuela conclude from these events that he didn't care about the family? Now, we have met Bruno, and he is many things, but uncaring isn't one of them. So why is she saying this? How could Abuela be unaware of her son's warm and compassionate personality after raising him and living with him for 4 decades? Has she just decided that the only possible reason for his disappearance is that he doesn't care about the family? And that whatever empathy or love he showed for the first 40 years of his life was all an act? Was it maybe that he was lying through his teeth when he agreed to see a specific vision for her, and that then he just went, lol, nah, and like skipped off to Vegas or something? What if he's dead? What if he's trapped or kidnapped or traveling far and wide in search of a way to save the miracle? She can't have any idea what's happening with Bruno, but she says he didn't care with such conviction, and there is very little reason for her to believe this, even from her own point of view. The only reasons that are even plausible are that she's just an idiot or that she's evil and likes to say nasty things about people, neither of which are supported by the script whatsoever. Now, I suppose she could just be angry, and so she's saying things that she doesn't really believe, but if she's angry with Mirabel, why is she bad-mouthing Bruno? And when Mirabel says, Bruno left because you saw the worst in him, why doesn't Abuela just respond with, you don't have any idea what you're talking about? Because, Mirabel doesn't have any idea what she's talking about. Bruno never said that he left because his mother saw the worst in him. And even if he had said that, it still wouldn't make any sense. Mirabel insists that
He loves this family. I love this family. We all love this family. You're the one that doesn't care.
And as she says this, enormous cracks propagate not only through the house, but throughout the entire village. She then adds,
You're the one breaking our home.
Don't you
The
ever...
miracle is dying because of you.
And now Mirabel has crossed a bit of a line. We have to ask, once again, what reason could Mirabel possibly have for saying this? Mirabel declares it to be so, and Abuela's eyes open wide in shock like some big revelation has just been dropped, but this is ridiculous. The movie has made very clear that nobody understands how the magic works. The only shadow of a clue that we've seen is that cracks seem to form when Mirabel feels sad or anxious or angry, which doesn't really help since she's sad, anxious, or angry throughout most of the movie. And we also see that cracks vanish and the candle burns brighter when Isabella was happy about destroying the town. There isn't really any kind of through line to connect these events, and in any case, how could any of this be tied back to and blamed on Abuela? I'm sure the idea that everything is Abuela's fault is very convenient for the themes that this movie wants to handle, but you have to support your message, movie. You can't just have your main character claim that everything is her grandmother's fault and expect it to stick when there is no possible way that Mirabel could know this. Making Isabella feel better about dropping expectations that nobody actually saddled her with in the first place, and then seeing the candle burn brighter, is not proof that Abuela is to blame for anything. In fact, it's actually pretty clear to me that Mirabel's unfounded accusations are, in this moment, literally tearing the house to shreds. Again, it isn't a problem per se that Mirabel is throwing unfounded accusations at her grandmother, but it's a bit strange, number one, that Abuela is just taking this all on the nose, as if she believes that there is actually some validity to all the nonsense that Mirabel is currently spewing. What I think the script wants to do here is to frame the failing magic and the unhappiness of the family as the direct result of the controlling, callous, domineering, or foolish grandmother. That she has been causing the very problems that she is most worried about, and indeed that her worry itself may be what lies at the root of the family's trouble. The problem is that there is very little, if any, support for this within the film, and there is plenty of evidence that something or someone else might be to blame. However, there is one accusation that Mirabel could be throwing at Abuela here. There is one deed that the old woman committed for which she cannot possibly escape blame, and which could have actually made for a very powerful moment were she to be directly confronted with it. She forgot to include Mirabel in the family photo at Antonio's party the night before. This is inexcusable, and from what we have seen of Abuela, I don't believe that she would even try to excuse it. In fact, she probably doesn't even realize that she did it, and this act actually encapsulates her one real persistent character flaw. Abuela is so concerned for the Encanto, the magic, the miracle, the management of the household, and the town as a whole that she overlooks the individual human beings that constitute her family, and she is accidentally denying them the love and personal attention that they so desperately need and crave from her. That is the real conflict here. Not only is this not the accusation that Mirabel is levying against her grandmother, but even if she did, we then have no reason to believe that this flaw in Abuela's character is in any way connected to the failing of the Encanto. There really isn't any reason to believe this other than, well, it's a convenient explanation. But it's not actually any better supported than any other explanation we could come up with, like, for instance, that Mirabel herself might be causing the problems. Instead of this petulant, juvenile tirade from our heroine, we could have characters actually acting consistent with who and what they have been established to be and what we know their desires and motivations are. I don't usually like to try and rewrite things, but just as an example, this scene could begin in very much the same way. We could have Abuela barging in and chewing out her granddaughter for seemingly causing even more destruction and chaos with regard to the magic. Mirabel could look around and see the terrified townsfolk struggling with the fallout of her sister's botanical binge, an unbridled rampage that she encouraged. She could see Luisa struggling and weeping over the loss of her power. She could see Camilo unable to control his shape-shifting, and Pepa surrounded by a storm cloud of worry and fear, and Mirabel might actually feel bad about what she's done. She might worry here that she was so caught up in the excitement of her quest to fix things that she may have inadvertently made things worse, which, you remember, is a possibility that she herself has acknowledged. Mirabel might actually break down in tears and saying something like, "I'm sorry, all I ever wanted was to be a good member of the family. I wanted to have a gift that I could use to help others. I wanted to be somebody that you could love and be proud of." And she could break down and just ask her grandmother, "Abuela, what did I do wrong? Why don't I have a gift?" Abuela could be stunned by this outpouring of grief and pain that Mirabel has tried so hard to keep hidden. And we might hear Abuela echo the words of Mirabel's parents, something like, "I don't know, but you don't need a gift to earn my love, Mirabel." And then Mirabel could call her out and say, Abuela, you say that I don't need a gift to earn your love, but you forgot me at the family photo at Donito's party last night. You didn't even notice that I wasn't there. And Abuela would have no rebuttal to that. She would realize that not only did she do a terrible thing to her granddaughter, but she was so distracted by thoughts of the magic that she didn't even realize it. This would put Abuela in a situation where she is forced to either double down on her actions and justify this neglect of her granddaughter, or else look inward and confront her own mistakes and flaws. She would have to apologize and, in a word, repent.
Go on. Apologize.
There might be a logical character growth. Now, I'm no screenwriter, but even this slapdash example that I've just thrown together shows that there are much more sensible ways of trying to make this confrontation work between these two characters. You don't need to have characters spouting unsupported nonsense at each other in order to have dramatic emotional payoffs. But anyway, that's enough of what might have been, or perhaps what I just wish might have been. So let's continue on with what the film actually does. On the heels of this little shouting match, the house finally begins to crumble. The entire family evacuates as the roof collapses, except for Mirabel, who, with some help from Casita, manages to grab the candle before being buried in a pile of rubble. Casita manages to build her a little shelter so she doesn't actually get turned into a tortilla, and apparently Mirabel didn't need to bother rescuing the candle anyway since it flickers out. It seems that the magic is now, finally, dead. Mirabel's mother finds her beneath the rubble, and the rest of the family steps cautiously through the dust of their erstwhile home. Abuela is stunned and saddened by what has just transpired, and then suddenly, Mirabel is gone, and we get several long shots of people trudging through town and jungle searching for her. So to summarize this scene, Abuela and Mirabel accuse each other of ruining everything. The house collapses, and the magic candle goes out, and Mirabel runs off, and everyone runs off looking for her. And the question here is that if, as I think we are meant to assume, that the magic has now died because of this argument between Mirabel and her grandmother, then why did the house collapse and the candle go out now as opposed to any time within the last 50 years? I have a really hard time believing that this family has not seen a single argument or fight in 5 decades. As far as the characters, we learn that Mirabel blames the failing Encanto and Bruno's disappearance on her grandmother, even though she has no reason to believe these things, and she now rejects the idea that she herself might be contributing to the problem with the magic, even though she acknowledged this possibility only a few minutes ago. And Abuela, for her part, now definitely believes that Mirabel was causing the problems with the magic, something that she only suspected before. She believes that Bruno never cared about the family, even though she has 40 years of evidence to the contrary, and she does not realize that she has been consistently overlooking the needs of individual family members. And I should probably mention that Casita is apparently concerned for the safety of the family even while in its own death throes. It's a brave little house. The biggest questions here for me are, first of all, does Mirabel actually believe what she is saying about her grandmother, or is she simply a grumpy teenager who's spewing accusations as a way of shunting everyone's negative attention away from herself? And secondly, why doesn't Mirabel actually just confront her grandmother with the one thing that she actually did wrong, that is, leaving her out of the family photo, which, if you'll recall, was something that no one else in the family noticed had happened either. But since this is the one thing that Abuela has unequivocally done wrong, I don't understand why it's not being mentioned here. And finally, it is nice that we now have some idea of what the consequences of allowing the Encanto to die actually are, namely that the house is gone and it seems that everybody has just gone back to being normal people without any magical gifts. It would have been nice if we or any of the characters had understood these stakes beforehand so that we could have some more concrete idea of what they were trying to avoid, but that's neither here nor there.